In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this super cute book page pumpkin craft. This is very easy to make and just takes some really simple craft supplies, and I'm going to show you how to do it every step of the way. Now, before we get started, be sure and hit that subscribe button to get all the latest sparkle and splatter video updates. I share craft tutorials like this one and so much more. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button, be sure and click it and get all the latest sparkle and splatter video updates. So let's jump in and learn how to make this super cute little book page pumpkin craft. For this project, you're going to need a pumpkin. Now, I have a small pumpkin here. You can use a larger pumpkin. It really depends on what you have. You can use something you already have. I found this at the craft store. I just wanted a little cute pumpkin. They make extra large ones too. So really any pumpkin you want will work for this project. We're going to be using some Mod Podge. This is kind of like a water-based sort of runny glue that you use for decoupage. I'm going to show you how to use it if you've never used it before. And then a brush to apply it on. And then we're also going to need a paper plate. I like to put any project I'm doing this, gluing, painting, etc., onto a paper plate so that I can move it while it's wet and it doesn't damage my surface. We're also going to need some glue to glue our stem back on. We're going to remove the stem, do our decoupage work, and then glue it back on. You'll also need some scissors and some ribbon. Now, I grabbed a couple different ones. We'll see which one is the best. I like to kind of hold it up when it's done. So I grabbed a couple spools of like fall looking ribbon and some scissors to cut. We're going to wrap it around the stem. And then I have some book pages. Now, I wanted to say, full disclaimer, this book was already destroyed. It was missing its cover. It was missing some pages. So I didn't damage a perfectly good book. I just wanted to say that it was already kind of like in terrible shape, and I just took a few pages out. It was already like totally missing pages, damaged cover, damaged pages. I think part of it had gotten wet. It was just in really terrible shape. So I repurposed and recycled this for a craft project. So I just wanted to say I didn't destroy a perfectly good book. But you'll need like a little stack of book pages. So let's get started by prepping our pumpkin. The first thing we want to do is we're going to remove the stem. Now, your pumpkin may have a stem that you don't like. You can totally remove this and use maybe a twig from outside. You could use maybe like a cork from a bottle, something like that. I like this stem, so I'm going to remove it, and you might need to cut it or kind of pry it up. Mine just kind of twisted out. It's just kind of stuck into, this is styrofoam, by the way. But I'm just going to give mine a twist and just pull it out. And that's okay if it has all this stuff on here. You can kind of pull it off. We're just going to be re-gluing this back in, so it really doesn't matter what's stuck to it, okay? Now, you might have some styrofoam crumbs if you have a styrofoam pumpkin like me. The next thing we're going to do is sort of put this aside, and we're going to prep our pages. So you can cut these with scissors, but I found that it looked really pretty if you just sort of tear them, and it makes little sort of like natural looking jagged edges. And I'm just ripping my pages into smaller pieces. You want to make sure, now if you have a large pumpkin, you can get away with larger pieces of the book pages. But if you have a small pumpkin like me, the smaller pieces are gonna work a little bit better, okay? So just go ahead and tear yourself some book pages. Again, this was already in terrible shape. I just wanted to let you know. I didn't want anybody to think I was ruining a perfectly good book, but now I have myself a nice little pile here like this, and I'm gonna just do a couple more. Ripping them diagonally gives you like just these nice little natural looking edges. You can cut it if you prefer. It's totally up to you. But I'm just kind of ripping this up into smaller pieces. And, you know, you'll need to separate them too. I did like a stack at a time, okay? I'm going to hold the rest of these aside if I need some more later, but I have a nice little pile here. Okay. Once our book pages are torn up, then we can start prepping our pumpkins. So dip your brush into the Mod Podge and we're going to hold it. Now, we are going to just cover to start. We're going to eventually cover the whole thing. But to start, we're just going to cover the whole top of the pumpkin. And let me just scoot this ribbon out of the way so I don't get stuff all over it. But we're just going to cover the whole top of the pumpkin. We're going to totally let it dry and then flip it over and cover the bottom of the pumpkin. If we were to do the whole thing now, when we set it down on this plate to dry, it will adhere to the plate and kind of just make a mess and ruin your pumpkin, okay? So we're just gonna do the top part. So what you wanna do is you wanna take your Mod Podge, just get a little bit on your brush, and just start coating the top of it, okay? In your mind, you can kind of draw an invisible line through the middle here and just kind of go from here upward, okay? So we're just gonna quickly put a thin layer of the Mod Podge. Now my styrofoam pumpkin, I can see actually an invisible line, semi-invisible line that sort of travels through here, I guess in the manufacturing of the pumpkin, but I'm sort of using that as a guideline. You may or may not have that, but if you do, it's helpful. So we're just covering just the top part of our pumpkin with a very thin layer of the Mod Podge, okay? Then you can set it down onto your plate like that. And again, we're not covering the bottom because it will glue itself to the paper plate. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start to decoupage. And I'm gonna zoom in just so you can see this a little bit better. Let me scoot some of this other stuff out of the way. And we have our little pile of little page scraps. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our brush and dip it again, and then just sort of like start laying these pages onto our pumpkin, okay? And as you do this, you're gonna brush the top of it. So it's gonna look kind of like school glue right now when you first use school glue, but it does dry clear. And it will start to, you know, look like there's nothing on it at some point, okay? Now, if you have a page that's too big, you can sort of like rip it a little bit if you need a smaller piece, and just kind of like paint over the top with the Mod Podge, okay? So just work all the way around your pumpkin with these. And if you get some shifting, that's okay. Just reposition it and keep on going, all right? Now, as these sit here with the glue on the front and back, the pages, if your pages are a little bit stiff, sometimes book pages can be a little stiff for this project. They will soften up because they're gonna start kind of taking in the liquid of the Mod Podge. So, so what you can do is kind of go back over it once it softens up and kind of tack it down, okay? And if you notice, once your fingers get a little sticky, you can sort of like pick up the pages with just your finger. And that's kind of fun and easy. So just keep going around, adding your book pages, and just painting it down with the Mod Podge, okay? Now I'm kind of going random. Like some of the text, if you look at the text, some of it's upright, some of it's upside down. I'm kind of taking like a random approach to this. And I think that gives kind of the best look. You want it to not be super uniform, okay? You want it to kind of look more artsy. You don't want to be able to like read the book when they're, okay? So we're just kind of going all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and keep covering this. And when we rejoin, I'll show you the progress that I've made, and we'll kind of look at what we've done, and then we'll move on to the bottom part of the pumpkin next. Okay, so we went ahead and covered the top part of the pumpkin, and I just wanted to say, if you have some areas where you're getting some folds and some creases, you can take, now as you can see, it's all over my hands, and that's okay, that's fun. But if you have any seams or creases or areas where it's kind of lifting, you can take your fingers, just make sure you wash your hands really good afterwards, but you can kind of use your thumb or even like the handle of your paintbrush and just go through while it's still wet and just kind of smooth all that out. And all these like little divots of our pumpkin, you can kind of define those a little bit too. So go through and just kind of smooth, and you can see here it's kind of sticking to the plate already, but just kind of go through and smooth everything out. This is the time to do it while it's still, the paper is soft and the glue hasn't dried yet. So just kind of go around and smooth things out. You can see I have some wrinkles all around here. So once that's as smooth as you want it to be, and it looks as, you know, nice and neat and smooth, then go ahead and let this dry for at least a few hours. And as you can see, again, the bottom hasn't been done yet. It's just the top part. go ahead and let this dry for at least a few hours. I like to dry mine overnight just to make sure it's completely dry all the way through, because we did put some of it underneath of the paper. The paper itself has been saturated, and then, you know, we did a layer over top. So it does have a little bit of drying to do. So we're gonna let this dry all the way through. I'm gonna let mine go overnight. And then when we rejoin, we're gonna flip this over and cover the bottom part next. Okay, so our pumpkin dried overnight. The Mod Podge is nice and firm. It feels very sturdy. So what we're going to do now is flip our pumpkin over, and we're going to do the bottom of it, okay? And that way we can let this dry overnight. So this is kind of a multi-day project. Okay, so we're just going to do the same thing we did before, and we're going to cover the bottom of our pumpkin with the Mod Podge. It's okay if you get it on the book pages, and in fact, it will kind of tack down any edges that might be sticking up as well. So we're just going to lay down a nice little thin layer of the Mod Podge just so we can get those book pages to stick, okay? Then we're just going to do the same thing. So just sort of tack them on there and grab your brush and just paint right over the top, okay? And we're going to do this for all of our pages, and if they lift up a little, just put another little layer down. And so tack that on to the next page, or piece rather, of the page. And then we're just going to repeat this all the way around the bottom part now, okay? So go ahead and do that, and then when we rejoin, I'll have this bottom covered and we can move on to the next part. Okay, I went ahead and covered the bottom, and I just wanted to share a little tip. If you have a little bit of lifting of your corners, sometimes the corners like will get little pockets in them and lift up, you can just take your finger and kind of smooth those down, and they usually stick back down a little bit, okay? So you might want to kind of go around and smooth it around before you let it dry, okay? So we're going to let this dry minimum a couple hours, but I like to let mine dry overnight so it's dry all the way through. So let's do that, and when we come back, we're going to put our stem back on our pumpkin and embellish it. Okay, our pumpkin has completely dried bottom and top. So now we're ready to reattach the stem rather, and add a little bit of ribbon. Now I found this ribbon I thought looked really cute with this. So I'm going to use this. It's wired. It's a little bit wider than when I showed before, but I thought it looked really cute. So what we need to do is kind of re-punch the hole where we pulled the stem from. Now you can use a tapestry needle, you can use a pair of scissors, whatever you like. I'm going to use some scissors, and you kind of want to, there's kind of a dent in there. You can kind of tell where it is, and you can sort of like punch your scissors in there and just kind of relocate the hole. Because we put paper over it, it kind of covers it, but it's very thin because it's just paper and some Mod Podge, so it's very easy to kind of punch the hole back in there. So the next thing we want to do, and I have some styrofoam stuck on here, it really doesn't matter, is grab a little bit of glue. You can use craft glue, hot glue. This is just some school glue I grabbed real quick. And I'm just going to throw some glue on this stem and just stick it back in there, okay? And then you'll, of course, want to let that dry. And if you're using hot glue, of course, let it cool down. So let's get a piece of this ribbon. And I'm going to just cut, I would say about 12 inches or so. I'm going to cut a piece of this ribbon. And all we're going to do, whatever ribbon you have on hand, actually it looks very beautiful without it. You don't even have to use ribbon really. But I'm going to tie a little piece around here just to give it a little pop of color. And I'm just going to wrap it around the stem. Now I don't have any glue kind of oozing out, because if you do, you want to wipe it off or at least let it dry, because it will get all over your ribbon while you do this part. But I'm just going to tie this around the stem. And whenever you're tying ribbon, just make sure everything looks nice and neat. And because this is wired, I can sort of like spread this out a little bit. And I'm going to kind of like, just kind of keep twisting and folding until everything looks the way I want it to. Get that nice and tight. And then what I like to do, we can scoot this out of the way now because our pumpkin is completely dry. But what I like to do with this type of ribbon is just cut it at an angle. I'm going to cut it towards the stem, and that'll just make it look cute, almost like a little bow. We're just going to cut at an angle towards the stem on this side so it matches, and then just kind of like straighten everything out. And if you need to kind of like reshape that up a little bit and give it a nice cut, Sometimes I make more than one cut just to kind of get it just the way I want it to look. Okay, so our ribbon looks really cute. It just kind of ties it all together. And that is how you make a book page pumpkin craft. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Sparkle and Splatter video updates. Bye everyone, and happy crafting!